Hey everyone, and welcome to the 13th episode of the Climate Con podcast. It's been a little while since we've done a show, and so far this year is looking to be very, very important in our fight against the climate con. Although, if you're living in the United States, you're living through the golden era and the destruction of the climate con because the Trump administration is completely decimating it every single step of the way, which is really awesome. However, here in the UK, the climate cult are still very, very entrenched here. We still have a very pro net zero government. And well, we're going to hope that they don't get into the next election because it'll be an absolute disaster if they do. But we'll do everything we can no matter what. And I'm very confident that we are going to see the end of the climate con if we just keep pushing. And I'm starting to see the cracks appear. We saw many cracks appear last year, which was really awesome. We had an incredible year last year, and we're going to keep the momentum going. And part of the keeping the momentum going is having some really awesome, intelligent people on the show. And that's where we've got Anika here, who's joined me today. And we're going to have a great discussion on everything related to CO2 and the climate and everything you guys want to hear about. So, Anika, would you like to just give an introduction to yourself and how you got to where you are now?
Hi, so my name is Anika Sweetland. I am an ex-climate scientist. I studied climate studies at the University of Western Australia, and turns out it was like a training camp for scientists rather than, a cutting edge degree with all of the latest science. Now, when I kind of look back through my lecture notes, I just see lie after lie after lie of, you know, things that will not ever happen. So, I was taught that we're in the middle of our sixth mass extinction event and that trees would starve due to climate change if carbon dioxide increased and all sorts of crazy things that, you look back now and you go, hang on a minute. I was actually studying science. How did I believe that? But you listen to your professors, and these were respected individuals in the scientific community, etc. So anyway, after that I worked for the Australian government in energy policy, and I was already pretty depressed about the fact that the world was on a trajectory to boiling and ending. And then when I worked in government and saw the level of bureaucracy and red tape, realizing that even if someone wanted to fix this, and even if there was a fantastic plan and strategy that was put into place, the red tape would make it impossible to ever do so. So after that, I became completely disillusioned and tried a few different careers. But now, as you said, with this net zero madness, I'm back. And yeah, it's time to speak up about what happened to me, what I was taught, and what the actual truth is.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you on our side. It's always good when we get a convert that's gone through the mainstream educational system and then comes out of it and like, wait, something isn't right here. So, what was it that like first did it for you? What, so the penny started to drop that maybe you've been fed a load of lies in all of your teachings.
So something really wasn't adding up for me in terms of the science. And so when we were doing climate modeling, we had to assume energy in equaled energy out. And I mean, the earth does regulate itself with homeostasis. So it kind of does balance itself, but we weren't factoring in all sorts of variables that inevitably would mean that there might be more energy in the system. It just wasn't an exact science. So that worried me. And a few emails I sent to professors about this sort of thing and equations and just never getting responses. Something just didn't really feel right
Hmm.
in the end. And then I recently wrote a paper on net zero.
Okay.
And basically, while I was writing that, the penny kind of dropped because I realized that if the government actually did believe that there was this impending catastrophic climate event coming our way, they would actually be trying to prepare the country. So increasing food security, increasing energy security, but actually, net zero is doing completely the opposite. And that's really when it was a turning point for me. And I went, hang on a minute, the government doesn't care, even though they are literally bankrupting us on the altar of saving us. So, what's going on? And then that's when I started digging a bit deeper.
Oh yeah, okay. And what was some of the first things that you found once you started to have a little bit look beyond the curtain?
Well, yeah, I mean, as I said, like in terms of food security, say you're preparing your country for a natural disaster, you'd want to stockpile food so that you can be completely self-sufficient. And we're putting solar panels on some of our most productive farmland. Now, solar panels, great in some places in the world, especially places like Australia, where I grew up, where, in some parts you have over 300 days of sunshine per year. But here in winter, it's actually dark for 70% of the time during winter. And so, firstly, solar panels make no sense at all. But then to put it on some of our most productive farmland and the way that they're treating farmers in terms of the new inheritance tax on farms. So that's what I found when I was digging deeper. And yeah, and does that answer your question?
Yeah, isn't it interesting that they're like I think you put it quite well, is that they're under the guise of saving us, they're actually destroying us, which is very strange. But I guess if they just came out and said, we're going to destroy you, everybody, but like, no, don't do that. But if everyone goes, we're going to save you, everyone's like, yeah, sure, save me. But then actually,
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy what's happening here. So have
Yeah,
you,
and this
go
is
on.
actually on that point, this is actually something that I touch on in my paper, is that this whole policy cycle, this fear-mongering, alarm raising cycle is something that has been repeated over the last 60 years. You scare the population into believing something really bad is coming their way, whether it's, you know, no oil or an ice age or global warming. And then you have them in a state of fear. And when people are in a state of fear, they resort to fight and flight. So that makes them a whole lot more malleable and resistant to, or not resistant to, whatever kind of policy response is waiting in the wings. So this is a cycle, which is also what I found. And the cycle is being repeated on us right now. The story is climate change. The fear is that, sea level rise are going to increase meters and we're all going to sink. And, they try and pluck the emotional uh, cord by showing us pictures of famine in developing countries and that sort of thing, saying it's all our fault because we're not acting on climate change. And then
Mhm.
they say, but we can save you. We're going to make everything better. We're going to go to net zero and then we'll be okay and you will have done your moral duty. And it's all a complete financial scam, unfortunately. I wish I wasn't sitting here saying that. I would rather it actually be improving our world and all of that.
Yeah, because this is a thing that I've noticed quite a lot, and it's kind of a shame really because there's a lot of really well-intentioned people that care about humanity and our planet and want to make the world a better place, and they have all of this care and love, but it's all being diverted into the wrong places. People that care
Yes.
about the environment and our habitat are being told that CO2 is the enemy and we need to lower CO2 emissions and that's going to save our habitat and our environment. And it's all completely backwards, but it's a big shame. So hopefully we can sort of pry people out of this because there are good people in amongst all of this mess that have just been completely hoodwinked and now they believe a whole bunch of lies and all of their energy is going into all of the wrong places. So I was wondering though, you've done a little bit of research on like the history and how it's sort of we are where we are now. Where do you think this all started? Have you gone that far?
Yeah, so this all started in the 60s, when the American media outlets, only a handful of scientists at the time said that global cooling was in the future, but most of the scientific community, back when that could be trusted, they said that we were actually going into a warming period. Regardless that only a few experts, which they actually were then, said that we were going into global cooling, the American media pounced on this, and this story of an ice age coming spread like wildfire. And you could be forgiven for believing at the time that an ice age was coming because it was in all the media outlets, on the cover of Times magazines, all of it, to scare the population into, you know, back in those days, it was a transfer of wealth between countries from the more developed nations to developing nations. That was the main vehicle of what they were trying to do then. So, yeah, it goes right back to the 60s.
But do you have like, have you got your name, like finger on any names of any groups or individuals that you think might have been responsible? So we had those scientists, perhaps they were like, maybe they didn't realize what they were doing or they had wrong data or something, or, but it seems like someone somewhere has deliberately orchestrated this.
Yeah. So the
Yeah.
whole point is that it was never the scientists telling the world an ice age was coming, because actually the majority of scientists were saying we're coming into a warming period, which is true. We're in a natural warming period now called the Holocene. We're meant to be in it. It's a 1500-year warming and cooling cycle that dictates our climate. It was the media.
Hmm.
It was the media, which we know is owned by a group of wealthy elites. And so, particularly the New York Times and Time magazine were two main perpetrators.
Hmm. Okay, and so I mean, I have a pretty good guess of why they're doing this, but why do you think they are actually doing this? The people that have created this narrative,
It
what's their benefit?
it's just to, retain power and control. When the IPC was created in 1988 slash 1989, Um, that was identical to the one world government structure I learnt about in university. And I was taught that it is the solution to a one world problem because it requires a one world solution. And the unit, ironically, was called global governance. So they've been moving towards this one world government model, ever since the 70s. And, they needed the whole generation to be in fear. And growing up in the 60s and 70s with fearful narratives surrounding you, like an ice age is coming, which is scary because actually the thought of freezing to death is a whole lot more scary than just wearing shorts outside, right?
Yeah. Could deal with that.
So,
When I heard global warming, I was like, please give me some of that.
yeah,
Coming from the
bring it
UK, right?
on.
Yeah.
Bring on the global warming. So, and I've spoken to people in person who grew up in this time, and they said they were terrified. Um, and so they needed a generation of very, of basically no resistance there because they've grown up with this fear. And then all of a sudden, someone has a solution for them. And this is all happening in the background through non governmental organizations like the United Nations. The World Meteorological Organization, and then they created the IPCC. And the IPCC is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And now, to give you an idea, 180 something countries around the world design their national policies, planning, developments, etc., all around what the IPCC reports publish. They've got a full control of all the governments in the world. Any business in the world that wants to start something, they also need to comply with IPCC regulations. Um, and America has done something very brave, and they have recently exited all United Nations architecture. And this means that it takes a couple of years to go through the process, but you can do it. I'm sure we'll talk about this more when we touch on reform. There's a quicker way um, to do it in the interim. But yeah, so they will no longer be signatory to things like the United Nations Framework on Climate Change, the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement. And this gives them the sovereignty to make their own laws again. And for example, here in the UK, last year we were taken to the European Court of Human Rights because apparently our planning document did not account adequately for climate change induced sea level rise, which is a myth. Okay.
Hmm.
It is a
Hmm.
myth. And we were taken to court, no doubt fined. And so we're all in jail. We're in jail and we don't realize because we have no
Mm.
control over our own governments anymore. And that was what their objective was, to retain power and control. Because I'm sure growing up, you as well, overpopulation would have been like a big talking point.
Mm.
So I
Yes.
feel like, at one point they went, oh God, in, 30, 40 years, we're going to have 8 billion people on the planet. How in the hell are we going to retain our power and control? How are we going to stop people from overtaking us in wealth, etc.? Because let's face it, if you had all the power and control in the world, why would you ever want to give that up?
I'm sure it's quite addictive.
I'm sure it
Yeah.
is very addictive.
Well, that's tough shit for them because we're gonna have to take it from them. But so you mentioned a little while back just then about a natural warming period because this is what I find really, really interesting. We start getting into some of the data, and it does seem like we have like warmed, but I think it's natural. Maybe CO2 has a small role to play, but not anymore. That's what I've seen. But I'd like to hear your thoughts. There's a few different counts. There are people that say it has a warming effect and then it tapers off. There's people that say it doesn't have any warming effect at all. But I'm more of the first. That's what I found, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
So,
on.
both arguments are generally correct. The people who are saying it has no warming effect at all, they are just kind of overemphasizing the point that it has a very little warming effect. The warming effect is there, but it is pretty much negligible
Mhm.
because carbon dioxide is only 0.04% of the atmosphere. So even if you doubled it, the actual relative increase in temperature would be less than 1%. And, let's talk about carbon dioxide. So, calling carbon dioxide a pollutant is a complete distortion of the truth. Al Gore was responsible for demonizing carbon dioxide, and he was very successful. If you look at the geological timescales, we are almost in a carbon dioxide famine. And it's regularly described as a blanket that encompasses the earth. And the more you add, the warmer it gets. But nothing could be further from the truth. Think about it. If it kept getting warmer, the temperature would consistently increase and fall, but the balance is maintained. And the earth naturally does this. And it does this by altering its surface temperature. And it's a thermodynamic fact that the heat being radiated to the Earth equals the heat that is radiated back from the Earth. But that's all I can tell you in that kind of detail with 100% certainty because I'm not an atmospheric physicist. I'm just a lonely climate scientist. But carbon dioxide was classified and described as a pollutant. But pollutants are typically substances that are directly harmful or toxic to life. And carbon dioxide doesn't fit that definition in the same way because it's a fundamental component of the natural carbon cycle. Plants obviously use it during photosynthesis to produce energy and grow. They support ecosystems and the food chain. Even people who don't consume plants, much of the food we eat comes from animals that depend on the plants. So, carbon dioxide is also often discussed as a primary greenhouse gas, but it's not the most abundant one in the atmosphere. Water vapor is actually the largest contributor to the greenhouse effect. And when combined with clouds, it accounts for roughly 90% of the natural greenhouse effect. But water is not classified as a pollutant. So it's been grossly oversimplified. Al Gore demonized it, saying that carbon levels were the highest they've ever been. They're actually some of the lowest they've ever been. And, the relationship between carbon dioxide and temperature is logarithmic, where carbon dioxide can only trap a certain amount of heat, and then we see diminishing returns. And we're already at 99% of that limit. It's called the saturation point. And no matter how much more carbon dioxide we pump into the atmosphere, the Earth will not get any warmer as a result of that.
Absolutely. That's what I found too, and I think this is really, really awesome once you actually finally get to this understanding. Because
Mm.
what everybody's been told is that carbon dioxide causes warming, and there's nothing more after that. But I really enjoy coming into the conversation. I go, yeah, CO2 causes warming, but and then you get to explain to the people, and it's overwhelmingly good news. This is why I really like this subject, is because often you start delving into all of these different rabbit holes, and it can be quite negative and dark, and there's all these horrible things you find. But with the climate side of this, I actually ended up having this massive dark grey cloud just sort of removed from my perspective about
Yeah.
humanity and society. It was actually really fun to sort of do a deep dive on all of this. Did you find the same?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, this is really good news. It doesn't matter how much carbon dioxide we pump into the atmosphere, we're going to be okay. There's
Hmm.
no impending catastrophe. The Earth is greening. NASA satellite data, which is the gold standard of data, by the way, you can always trust satellite data, shows that the Earth has greened 10% in the last 20 years. I mean, due to the increase in carbon dioxide. In commercial greenhouses, they pump carbon dioxide to 1,400 parts per million because it grows the best plants. So, this is all really good news. And so, I guess that's why it's such a joy to come back into the space because originally I set out doing this so I could try and save the world, right? But actually, maybe I can save the world by just actually being like, guys, it's okay. We don't need saving. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
maybe
Save the
that's
world by
how
not
it's going to
saving it.
happen.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I like that. That's it. So we just do nothing and would save the world. Yeah, I believe there's been some warming that's happened recently as well. It does seem like it. And so if it isn't all to blame on CO2, maybe partially, what do you think actually is causing this warming? You mentioned there's a natural warming cycle that we're in already.
Yes. So we've seen roughly zero point 0.9 of a degree of warming if you're going by the global average. Um, right. People don't, the whole point of indoctrination of climate education is to not teach people the real science. And so I guess I'll give you just a short preview of the science lesson that you probably should have learned at school. It would have been a really nice one. So basically, a few things affect the Earth's climate. So the first one is called Milankovitch cycles, and this is our position relative to the sun. And so a lot of people think that the Earth travels in just a circle around the sun and its distance never changes. But that is incorrect. Actually, it travels in an ecliptic. So at the sides, it can be closer or further away. And so that's a 400,000 year cycle. And it also has its tilt and the way that it wobbles around the Earth. So there's three different variables that make up its uh, point relative to the sun. And every 100,000 years, like clockwork, this causes an ice age. And this is why you'll never meet a paleontologist, a marine biologist, a geologist that actually believes in man-made climate change because they've all seen the ice core records. And as soon as you see the ice core records and you see these perfect repeated cycles like clockwork for um, temperature over time, every 100,000 years there's an ice age, and that's when you realize, oh, those are the mechanics of the climate. So that's the greatest forcing on the Earth's climate, and there's no escaping that. There is no force greater than the sun. So, I think also sometimes a lot of this man made climate change argument is a bit egotistical and man's idea that they can control the climate or out control it. But anyway, I'm getting off track. So that's the first one. The second one is that within these ice core records, they also found repeated 1500 year cycles. And there's 60 of these. So for the last million years, we've had 1500 year cycles, give or take 50 years. And they show a warming and then a cooling. And, this is how the earth regulates itself. And so you'll hear about the medieval warming period, which was between 800 and 900 AD. And you'll hear about the Little Ice Age, that was between 1400 and 1900. And people think that was just a European thing. It wasn't, it was a worldwide thing. And we've got climate proxies from all over the world that show that there was indeed a mini ice age, we'll call it. Um, and this is normal. This is how the world works. And so imagine being taught that when you're in year 3 and 4 instead of this crazy carbon dioxide temperature story.
Mm.
And yeah, I mean, then you have things like the El Nino Southern Oscillation, and that is effectively a very dominant ocean current. And the oceans actually make up 70% of the world's volume, and they are huge forcings on the climate as well. And then you have things like volcanoes, but they're just temporary, kind of unpredictable things. But, Mount Pinatubo, for example, ejected, I don't know, 20 million tons of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere, and that cooled the Earth by, a degree or two for a couple of years. So there's things like that as well. But mainly, it is our position relative to the sun that causes the warming and cooling. So we're in a warming period right now, and it's going to be really beneficial. We've actually got really great climate ahead for the next 300 to 400 years, and we're going to see less frequent storms and extreme weather events, and we are going to have far more favorable growing conditions, like the medieval warming period, where the European localities produced so much wine because you have the right conditions. So yeah, it's just good news.
Yeah, I really hope we do get some warming. And there's some people that say we're going to be going cooling now, warming now. I don't know, but whatever. I'm really hoping that we do get some warming because I think I'm all for that. I don't think
Yeah,
anybody
look,
living
it
on this.
is it is beyond reasonable doubt. It is empirically proven beyond measure. Anyone that ever says, I don't know whether we're in a warming or cooling period, you can tell them we're actually in the Holocene. You can look it up, even on the programmed to be indoctrinated ChatGPT. That even says, yes, we're in a period of warming called the Holocene. So take it from me, climate scientist, expert on the subject. We are without a doubt in a period of warming, and it is a very good thing. We have just
Hmm.
been brainwashed to believe that it's a scary thing that must be stopped.
That's the only way. That's the only way someone living in the UK could ever believe that warming is bad is if they've just been hit with a monumental amount of propaganda. Anybody else would just be like, yes, please, warm us up a bit. Would you just please? So, yeah, obviously you're a pro warming, so am I. But a lot of people, when you get onto the subject of warming, they get worried about that. So what
Of
are some of the
course.
benefits you think that we would get from having this place a bit warmer?
Pardon?
What are some of the benefits you think we would have if this place was a bit warmer, if Earth was just a little bit warmer?
Well, just like I said, we'll have better growing conditions, which is great. We'll have more food volume, um, less frequent storms and extreme weather events.
Oh, yeah, see, that's interesting. Why do you think if it was slightly warmer, we'd get less frequent storms?
So basically, it has to do with the stability of the pressure systems. You know how, like, when you have highs, it stabilizes the um yeah, I would have to come back to you with the exact. I would
Hmm.
need to just look into my Bible of good stuff there. But yeah, that is the science.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too, and I've heard it could be because of how the warming, if say if we did get warming on the planet, it wouldn't be like it's all sort of uniform and everywhere warms the same. The colder parts would warm a bit more than the warmer parts. Do you think that would sort of suit that follow what you've been told? And then it's
Yeah,
because the difference in temperature is what causes a lot of the extreme weather, right? So if
yeah,
they're sort of closer, there's less
yeah.
tension for them to go crazy with a hurricane.
Yeah, and extreme weather is just another, or the increase of extreme weather is just another myth that is peddled to make us fearful. And any climatic event, any bushfire, any flood, all the mainstream media jump on it to say, look, this proves what we've been telling you all along. So,
Mhm.
it's just a, it's like a smoke screen, smoke and mirrors.
Just when you say that, I have Paul Burgess in my head saying, "It's weather, not climate." And
Yes, yes,
that's
yes.
all it
So,
is.
yes, we have a few hundred years of warmer weather ahead, but then we will ultimately go into a mini cooling period again. So then it will be up to our future generations to implement the right technology so that we can get through that quite well. But I'm sure in hundreds of years, hopefully, we will be a little bit more evolved and open-minded than we are now.
Let's hope so and do everything we can to make that a reality. And so, there's just some more points here that I'd like to touch on whilst I got you here. There's a very common myth, and I call it a myth now because it is basically a myth, about the 97% consensus amongst climate scientists. And that propaganda line has been so powerful and repeated endlessly, but it's completely false. And so, so what do you think about that premise? Because I haven't found that to be true at all.
Well, look, the idea that consensus is science is a joke to begin with. Science is finding an objective truth. So if you stop seeking the truth, you're actually not doing science. And again, what I was presented with in university was the settled science, no
Mm.
questions allowed. That's actually not science.
No, it's religion.
Yeah, it is religion. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
a cult. It's an
Yes.
ideology. So, but they peddle that and people believe that because let's face it, people believe experts. If I've got something really wrong with my health, I'm going to be listening to what that doctor's saying on the phone. I'm not going to
Mhm.
be like, oh, I might take it with a pinch of salt. They're going to be my lifeline. So when people are not informed on the subject, they look to their experts. And this is why it has been so successful.
Yes, and well, I find it really interesting to figure out and find out that actually most scientists don't agree with this. But if you just take that propaganda piece, it's like that's all you believe. No, it's such a great subject.
That's very funny. Yeah. As I said, find me a geologist who believes in man-made climate change, please.
All
Try.
right. So now you said you take a bit of a break from all of this. You've come back now and you've got your X account, which I saw, which seems to be doing quite well, and you're getting a bit of momentum built on there. So what's your plan here? Where are you going with all of this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to keep seeking the truth like a scientist does. I've always, you know, always felt like a scientist, always wanted to be a scientist, always thought like a scientist. Perhaps not all the time at university, but I did do my best. I was questioning things. It didn't make sense. It left a strange. The whole thing was strange. So I did the best I could. But anyway, now I'm making up for that brainwashed era with really seeking the truth and communicating that to people because I think that actually hearing the truth about something is quite cathartic for something that people have been worried about for such a long time. I mean, like I said, I've been meeting people who were afraid of the Ice Age. They've basically been afraid for a lot of their life growing up, and that's not okay.
Mm,
It's not okay to teach children that their world is on fire. That is scary. It is anxiety inducing. Some people, not myself, but some people will say that that is akin to child abuse. So the whole point is what they've done is not okay. Lying to everyone all day, that's not okay. We're in an era now where we exchange and communicate information so freely that the thought of that information being false, I just couldn't sit by and remain silent any longer. I did a couple of speeches on net zero, and the response was so mind blowing that I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to come online with this. And so I did this year, and here we are.
oh, that's awesome. So this X account is only a year old. Oh, it's slightly older, but you're only
It's
active like
literally 6 weeks old.
wow.
Yeah, it's just exploded. Yeah, so in like 6 weeks, I've got 17, nearly 18,000 followers. Yeah, but it was very deliberate waiting to come online until I was completely ready because I knew the climate establishment would come after me, which they have, trying to discredit me and all of that. I knew it was coming. So I had to be in a place in my life where I was ready to take that
Mm,
on and
yeah.
put up with that and just ignore it and just get on with it. So yeah, it's been a deliberate, the timing is very deliberate.
Well, that's incredible. That's an incredible start. 6 weeks, nearly 18,000 followers, and it's a testament to the power of X right now. And also, what I'm seeing in social media in general is, I do believe this is the Trump effect manifesting, is that these subjects are now easier to reach people. There's less censorship, so it's a very, very pivotal time to be speaking this incredibly important truth. All right, so. What we got here? So there was something else. Yeah, I just wanted to mention this because you said about how it's a criminal to be brainwashing children of all of this, and you gave an example of when you was 19, was it? Saying about how where was it? I might think I can find the post again. Saying what you believed when you was 19 and how what was it? Yeah, you was trying to
Mm.
lay awake at night and calculate when there's going to be
I
a
would lie
flood.
awake.
Yes.
Yeah, like how long left until the food shortages hit? Where am I going to live in 20 years' time where it's actually safe to live to avoid the sea level rise? You know, is it even ethical to bring a child into this world? It was literally, those were the thoughts that were keeping me awake at night because I felt like I'd been privy to all of this information about the world and what the direction it's going. And yeah, it's a really scary story.
Yeah, well, it's good that you turned it all around, but it's a good example. That's what happens to people once they've gone through the schooling and the educational system as you come out of it and you're just terrified. You also end up hating your own country, but that's another subject. All right. So, uh,
Exactly.
yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's just like that's the natural default state. But so you mentioned I've seen as well in your profile, you're a strong supporter
Can
of
I
reform.
just, sorry to interrupt you
Yeah,
there,
sure.
but I believe I have figured out why it is a default state for someone to end up in that mindset.
Uh-huh.
So, because you're taught about, what is happening to the world, our home, we all have a huge vested interest in what happens here. We're being told that it's being destroyed and it's falling down all around us and that it's burning and tipping into catastrophe and no one's doing anything about it. That causes a feeling of disempowerment and disillusion with the world. And you are upset with the powers that be in your country because apparently they're not doing anything about it. And that is why you end up depressed, disillusioned, and disempowered. And also, that is a good state in terms of the IPCC's mind for people to be in when they are grown up, because once again, they will not be resistant to all of these crazy policies and laws that are being pushed through. So the story itself weakens people and destroys their sense of hope and, faith in people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very well done. You got to give them credit. This has been very well pulled off, and there's a lot of intelligent people that clearly put a lot of energy into creating all of this. So credit where credit's due, but yeah, we've got to destroy
Very
it all.
kind of you.
Yeah,
Yes.
well, you can understand my enemy. They're very intelligent.
Yes, absolutely. Uh, but they do have, yeah, look, I will not, I'll behave.
You don't have to behave, Anika. It's okay.
It's Annika,
Anything goes. Sorry, sorry.
like Anakin Skywalker.
Oh, that's way cool. You should just introduce like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, maybe I should.
yeah. So what I saw though, which is really, really cool, is that you are a strong supporter of reform, and so have I been because of there's a few things I like about what they're doing, but they're the first major political party to just be completely against net zero. So I was like, okay, you guys have the climate cons vote just on that alone. So why is it they've done it for you?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, exactly. I think that is exactly what did it for me when I saw that they were willing to scrap net zero. Yeah. And in order to do that, you need to repeal the Climate Change Act, which means leaving United Nations infrastructure. And yeah, it removes the grip on our ability to make our own rules, laws, policies, etc. So for me, that is the only way the UK is going to have a future is if we can actually make our own laws.
Hmm. Yeah, it is that huge of an issue. Like the net
So it's like
zero.
a
Go on, carry on. I think there's a
so it's
slight
like
delay
a
quickly.
top-down thing. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely what did it for me, scrapping net zero, 100%.
So, what do you think about Restore that have just come onto the scene? I haven't seen them mention anything about the climate just yet.
Mm. Look, I think that we have one chance to save this country. And look, I'll have beers with Restore supporters any day because we all believe in the same thing. So
Hmm.
why don't we all go towards the party that actually has the infrastructure and the majority polling so that we can actually achieve what we all want? Don't try and be edgy and join Restore. I mean, they have some great policies, but they are all reforms policies, and reform will do exactly what Restore will do. I mean, it's the same ideology. It is just crazy to split the vote like that. But I really don't believe that there is a huge amount of votes for Restore. I think that when it comes to polling day in the general election, I think that Restore will just remain a fringe party like Advance. However, it is still detrimental to the number of MPs we could have in Parliament. So just vote for reform and let's just get a right wing party into government. And then at the next election after that, then maybe it can be restore or reform. Let's just get a right wing party in and save our country. I mean, what are we doing, guys? We literally have one chance to save our country. Personal politics has to come out of it completely. We need to be as strategic and tactical as the left and actually back the party with the only chance of winning.
100%. That's actually very much what I've been looking at the situation like. It's I think Restore will be the perfect party for the next election after this one. I think it is possible that they somehow, but I just don't see it. The thing that I seems quite likely is there might end up being some sort of working together, which I think would be a beautiful sort of like there's been this whole breakaway of oh no, Rupert couldn't work with us, and then then at the very end, I think eventually everybody's going to have to work together, or it's going to be like if we don't do this, the Greens are going to win. I think that's my prediction, but we'll
Look,
see how it goes.
uh, there's definitely not going to be a coalition because Rupert got kicked out of reform for sexually harassing uh, women in the team or the party or wherever, and for bullying complaints. So that's why he was ejected. Then I think there was a big fight where he probably got things got a bit heated and there was talk of threats coming to shoot or whatever. But you know, uh, we don't really want bullies in the party. Nigel would never work with him. That's why he fired him. Um, Nigel really couldn't afford to lose an MP, and he still did that. So really, and there's a huge vendetta between the two. They do not like each other, and I have had it on good authority that Rupert said, "I will destroy your party if it's the last thing I do." This is nothing more than a vendetta. If you look at Rupert Lowe's vested interests, he has a huge amount of money in solar panels and green energy infrastructure. Um, he made a huge amount of money on the furlough scheme, etc. Uh, I'm sorry, but in my eyes, he's just as bad as the Conservatives.
Yeah, well, let's hope something happens that it all comes and works together. It's just because like there is a big shame that it will split the vote massively.
Reform will get in and something will happen.
That would be great. I really
Oh,
hope for
it's
that.
terrible. I wish they could work together and sort it out. And yeah, who knows? There might be a miracle.
I even go a step further, Annika, and say that did I say that right, Annika? Anakin
Yes.
Skywalker? Yeah, I got that right. Yeah, no, I go
That's
further
it.
and to say that this has been one whole grand conspiracy, and Rupert and Nigel and Ben were all sitting at a table smoking cigars, and they're like, "How do we take over everything?" So we'll pretend that we're enemies, make this big spectacle, and you'll start a new party, and you can talk about these things. Reform can talk about these things, and in the end, we'll control everything. But that's me going way out on a limb here. But I just I like to think about things like this. But anyway, this has been really interesting to speak to you. I'm really glad you came on the show. Is there any final thoughts you'd like to leave with the people before we wrap up?
No, I think we pretty much covered it all. But my advice would be just don't ever believe what you read or hear, even from me. Go and check it out yourself. Climate at a Glance is a really good website. They have all of the NASA satellite data to back up their observations. That is kind of where I get most of my data from now. Yes, if you want to learn more about the climate debate, that is a really good resource.
And where can people find you? What's your X handle?
It's Anika_climate, so Anika_climate.
Awesome. Great. Well, I'll be following your page and look forward to seeing you around.
Nice one. Thank you so much.